Good Thursday to you, everybody in Com 710. Welcome again to Week 5's Boom review of Week 4. Bang. I am back. I didn't intend to wear the same sweater today as I did yesterday. It just worked out that way. But I've got the merch today, as I didn't in the last video. And as always, much better. Okay, here I am, your now sufficiently caffeinated communication instructor. We are going to take a look at the questions and answers from last week. Give you some things, additional things to chew on, for the old brain-a-roo when we wrap up as well. Okay, remember, be working on those. Be working on, ouch, your paper topics. Speaking of things to recommend for the old brain-o to chew on, I want to recommend this book or books like this. Okay, this is Steven Pressfield. The trying to get the glare off it there. The War of Art. Okay, break through the blocks and win your inner creative battles. Look, whether you're writing research papers or I sometimes write poetry. In fact, I'll give you a little sample of that in today's announcement. Whatever it is you got to write, there's a creative process that you have to get through. Pressfield is an interesting guy. Now, he writes this book for writers, but it's really anybody that's in the creative field. And he says, look, the reason that you're struggling, that you're having problems is that you're knocking against resistance. And he personifies resistance as an evil. He's one of these authors who is Christian, but he's very stealthy about it, which, I kind of have mixed feelings about. In some ways, this indirect communication can be effective, and in some ways not so. But that's not the point with his book. But rather, he's saying there is a force working against you, and here are some strategies to overcome that force. So whether you're writing a research paper or your own stuff, or you want to go on, I know some of you talk to you and you say, I'm interested in journalism. I'm interested in working for think tanks. I want to work for not-for-profits. Okay. You got to crank out stuff that, has impact. And to have impact, it's got to get people's attention. And most importantly, to get people's attention, it has to be done. Okay. So if you, everybody does. I shouldn't say if you struggle with the creative process. Everybody struggles with the creative process. This book, Pressfield, he's got a bunch of them. Addresses strategies to help get around that struggle. Okay, let's take a look at what we did last week and see what you said. I have no idea why. I was looking at this again. Why did I type one question instead of question one? Brain hiccup. Anyway, one question or question one, okay? In his chapter on how could so much produce so little foreign affairs reporting in the wake of 9/11, Fahmy begins by writing, scholars have repeatedly criticized American news media for reporting foreign news in less complex manner, and for oversimplifying and decontextualizing international news. For example, in a visual context analysis of Tiananmen Square coverage, Perlmutter found that the U.S. media focused on an image of a man blocking a tank, making it the super icon for the entire revolution. He concluded that the U.S. media presented an oversimplified and decontextualized view of a large student demonstration. Now, this is older research, but this trend of simplification has accelerated in the news, not resolved. I mean, this was back, this kind of coverage was back before a lot of internet content. And initially, internet content was very robust. And then, things sort of evolved or devolved, whatever word you like. And, eventually we ended up with services like Vine, which are defunct as that as they no longer exist, in which videos were no more than 8 seconds, usually around 1.5. I think they got snapped up. Vine got snapped up by YouTube, or maybe it was Insta or TikTok. I don't remember. Somebody correct me on that. Who bought what? It sort of turned into TikTok, okay, which are very short. And so the content producers on those platforms are looking for iconic, not in the sense of, oh, big and grand, but an image that represents the entire concept. So the reason I gave you this, even though it's dated a bit, is that this process has accelerated and become more pervasive than less pervasive. Okay, so back to you though. So if you agreed or disagreed, I asked you to take a look at sources, and I even gave you a couple. Okay. Well, like Why the News Isn't the Truth, and then Roland Barthes' Rhetoric of an Image. Okay, if you agree. Holly, let's go with you because you went first. I do agree with FAMI, Even News, that covers events here in the States can be that way. If you think about how the right and the left cover news stories, they can cover the same issue. But if you tune in to watch both, it's like you're watching two different things. Both sides can cover things in a way that makes their side look better and the other side come off looking like fools. And I mean, that's an excellent answer. You're right. One of the ways to, and this could be a really interesting, fascinating topic for research, take a look at the anchoring images news sources use for stories. And the anchoring videos. Frequently, the anchoring video is not related to the main story in context. In fact, it might be even a completely different story, but it presents an image that the framer of the story thinks galvanizes the main point that they want you to get, because they know that you, the viewing audience, are going like this, and they don't make any money unless you stop and you go, oh yeah, what's that? Click. They don't make any money, and they want to make money. That's why they're there. Okay, back to you, Holly. Even in events like what was covered, and I'm assuming you mean Tiananmen Square, please be specific in your answers, everybody. Journalists can mean well, but there's no possible way for reporters to see everything or cover everything. Even journalists frame issues the way they see them. Everyone has a different perspective. Every journalist has to frame the story. Okay, now this is good, Holly, but when you guys are answering this, give me the whys. Okay, why is it that they have to frame stories? I mean, I'll tell you why. Part of it is money. It takes a lot longer to explain a story than just to give some sort of an iconographic representation of the story. It's basic human behavior. We respond. I mean, we have a brain that's hardwired to respond to symbols that are assigned to feelings and behaviors. I mean, quite frankly, if we didn't, we would drop over from exhaustion. The human brain makes up about anywhere from 8 to 12% of body mass, but it gobbles up something like 25% of energy expenditure. That is a hugely lopsided, mass to energy expenditure ratio. If your brain took any more energy just to figure out stuff, you wouldn't be able to get out of bed. So you, me, everybody else, we're hardwired to assign symbols to thoughts and actions. And that can be helpful. Red means stop. Green means go. Or maybe green means stare at your phone and don't go. These days, who can tell? That's helpful. Sometimes it's harmful. Persons of a certain color or ethnicity or religion always do this. It is the hardwired origin of prejudicial behavior. It's just built into the wiring. Okay, we do that, and journalists know this. Media companies know this. It takes a lot of money to keep paying somebody to do something on the same thing. If it's not necessary to get you to open the paper back in the old days or click on the story now, because that's the bottom line. Okay, back to you, Holly. They have to decide what to cover, not what to cover, what is essential and not. There's a difference between journalists who mean well, though, and those who intentionally cover things that are purposely oversimplified to make news and countries look in a certain way. There are both kinds of journalists and news organizations out there. As a former reporter, I've worked for organizations that have had wonderful people on it. I also left a company whose news practices I disagreed with. I have two, and not news companies, but actually news companies, and clients working for them as someone that's creating their media. Just like, okay, I'm out. So I've personally seen both. The article I found talked about fake news and reporters covering things in a way that supports their agenda and discredits others. This is such a problem that many countries have a task force to deal with the situation. Yeah, they do, and we should be very careful about such forces. For the U.S., they talk about Russia meddling in the elections. Both sides have different opinions about it, but it illustrates that many misinformation and news organizations spread things in a way that supports their agenda or their political side's agenda, purposely discrediting the other side. And that's a good answer, Holly, because yeah, we by way of information, now media has not always been like pure as the wind driven snow. If you look at media in the United States, in say the 19th century, ay ay ay. I mean, it's just like bare knuckle fist fights, man. Some of the most slanderous, lopsided, salacious stuff, racial stuff. I mean, all across the board. Just a free for all. As we moved into the 20th century, this is 1910, things got a little better. Perhaps the heyday of reporting by way of trying very hard to be honest came post World War II, in which there was such egregious manipulation of the press on the part of a number of European nations, and specifically those who were on the other side of the conflict from us, Germany, Italy, that there was sort of a whoa, ho, ho, ho. We have to be a lot more objective about this. Okay. And there was even some serious, questioning of how the U.S. was conducting itself during the war by the news media. And ironically, that very questioning led to. I mean, if you didn't see the film Oppenheimer, it's got nothing to do with media, but it's worth saying it was a very, very well done film. Part of the backstory to the acceleration of the development and finishing of the bomb, the atomic bomb, was the press was asking a lot of questions about, how long is this war with Japan going to take? And what exactly are we doing? Because prior to dropping the 2 atomic bombs that we did, we had launched a firebombing campaign on major cities in Japan, Tokyo being one of them, and U.S. Air Command in Okinawa had gigantic maps on the wall with sections of the city of Tokyo marked off, and it's like, okay, this is the one we're going to burn to a cinder tonight by dropping bombs that were full of gelatinized. There we go. Flammable liquids, sort of a precursor to napalm. And they were meant to burn everything and everyone and create temperatures that were so hot that they sucked the oxygen out of adjoining areas and suffocated people to death. And I'm not saying, look, I'm not passing any judgment. I'm just telling you what was happening. And there were reporters that were going, there was a really interesting interview I saw once with a U.S. reporter from the war with the head of U.S. Air Command, the Strategic Air Command. And they're saying, don't you feel, kind of bad about planning raids that are going to burn civilians to death? His response was very telling. He said, if I felt bad about it, I wouldn't be doing my job. I'm like, okay. So, so because reporters were poking and probing and asking questions like, how many more people getting killed? How long is it going to be? The United States government says, we got to figure out a way to end this war. And a race with Germany was not the reason, because they were well out of the nuclear race back in 1944, and they had surrendered in May of 45. So, and you see that in the movie Oppenheimer. Like, okay, well, we defeated the Nazis, which was the whole point of this bomb. We can stop working, right? And the U.S. government was like, oh, no. Okay, so how something is framed and how it's pushed forward has real consequences. After the war, and there was an attempt to sort of professionalize the news. I'm not saying it was perfect. Things were a little better. But with the coming of 24/7 cable news, in which there was an absolute necessity to have number one, content, because you get 24 hours to fill. You got to put something in there. And then 2, when other competitors got into it, CNN was first. And then when other companies jumped into the same, Fox, and then MSNBC, let's see, and Turner Broadcasting Network and these sorts of things. Now you saw the acceleration. It's not like it hadn't existed before, but the real acceleration of audience fragmentation and competition for those fragments for advertising revenue. And that's where we are today. Okay, so although this article is a little older, all right, it's still going on today. Now, finally, and I'm not defending this, I'm just telling you how this works. Back to how the brain works, that we assign images, symbols to things. I mean, hey man, sometimes when you need to get a reaction out of people and you need them to do something, and their attention span is not going to be there. I mean, I've stopped looking at, but I used to spend a lot of time with research about how long do people look at a website, a screen, how many pages, how many words will they use, where do they look? I did that a lot for my clients. And this was 10 years ago. And if you had more than 250 words, forget it, man. People were gone. You lost them. All right. Now it's much, much lower. You had better hook them like that or they're gone. And as such, content creators have got to figure out what is an image, or maybe the image that encapsulates what we're trying to say here. So it's not that by design they're like, oh well, we just don't understand this event. Let's ignore everything else. And I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it's like this dance. It's this dialogue between the content creator and the audience. And the content creator has got to make money. And as such, they've got to tap into what the audience responds to. And I'm not justifying any of this, but it is what it is. I'll include for you, an image that I created for a not-for-profit. I won't name the not-for-profit because I don't have their permission, but I'll put a link in the announcement. Okay. And I won't even have to tell you what it is that I was trying to say on behalf of the not-for-profit. You'll see the image and go, bam. In fact, I use, because it's my image, I own it. I use it in a post I put up on my website, sort of reflecting back on some of the work that I've done around the world. So it'll have a little poem with it too. Okay, question number 2. In the chapter News as Culture, Comparative Study of News, Coverage and War in Iraq. Where'd I go? Okay. Ganman writes about the use of frames and framing for news. First, what is framing? This relates to news. Second, select 2 of the following news sources. Coverage 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Yeah, and I'm sorry that a couple of those got put behind a paywall. Okay. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about framing, how different it was. Okay. So, Holly, I'm going to go back to you again. Framing is when you select certain aspects of story that make them important while making less aspects of the story as noticeable or not even covering them. Correct. So first and foremost, understand that we say framing, it's not only telling the viewer what it is you want them to see, like look at this, don't look at this, but what you want them to, how you want them to see it. What do you want them to think about? Okay, every reporter frames an issue. You can't get away from framing. All right. And you should be on the lookout for this. I mean, I use an app on my phone, and it's a source. I mean, it's you can get this on your PC that covers news in a very interesting way. The source is called Ground. Let me just go back to the icon. There it is, right there. Okay, it's a little. Let me see if I can get the focus on the phone. Right there, Ground. Okay. And this is a source that reviews stories, presents stories, and then gives you an analysis as to whether they lean politically left, politically right, or if they land in the center. And this at least gives you a starting point to sniff out the frames. Okay. So when I'm looking at stories, I often look at them through Ground, and I'll compare how different, and then it gives you the news sources, the news sites that the story is covered in. and I'll make a comparison. So, the remedy for this, Holly, you're right, framing is everywhere. The remedy for you as a communication expert is to get in the habit of reading widely. I mean, look, in one of these questions coming up here, I gave you a clip from Russell Brand. A lot of you said, I don't like Russell Brand. Okay. But, and I'm not saying specifically for Russell Brand, watch sources that give you viewpoints that you may not agree with. Okay. If the individual giving the viewpoint or the organization is covering the story, read broadly and widely through the stories, and this is how you deal with frames. Back to you, Holly. I took a close look at the third article. I agree with Nisa. The title was misleading. It could have been a much better topic, though I think the article did a great job in highlighting the mass story, particularly the video clip from the title. Would have expected the news story to be more about than just one survivor from the actual gathering. That really wasn't the subject of the story. More important is how the man felt. I'll never forgive for what was done to him and his family, understandably so. Okay, so yeah, and comparing, say, Al Jazeera with what you got from the Israeli news. Okay, I'm surprised nobody grabbed this. That the Al Jazeera, that how Jews were mistreating the president of France, Emmanuel Macron. All right, and it was sort of like, yeah, okay, is this about the Holocaust or what? It sort of sidestepped the whole thing. Okay, as opposed to Sky News Britain. All right, question number 3. Back in 2020, several news outlets reported that 270 doctors, sort of, had written an open letter, and then I gave you a letter asking the music through Spotify to remove Joe Rogan's program from their streaming service. The 270 doctors, the story noted, claimed that Rogan, a sportscaster and podcaster, was making false and misleading statements concerning vaccination and the treatment of COVID-19. So I wanted you to review the story. I gave you something from the UK Guardian, and then I gave you a clip from Russell Brand covering the coverage. And the UK Guardian story, menace to public health, not even with question mark. It was sort of like menace to public health. And there it is. It's like Joe Rogan is menace to public health. Okay. And then the question was, who's framing who? Okay. Is Joe Rogan being framed, or is Russell Brand framing the UK Guardian, the Gazette? What? Okay, Nisa. It's interesting that these people in the medical fields are called doctors in one article, then experts in another, which is questionable. Yeah, because as you see in the Russell Brand presentation of story, many of them are like graduate students and dental hygienists and things like that, and they're not doctors in the sense. I mean, I'm a doctor in the sense I'm a PhD. I never call up places. I go, oh yeah, this is Dr. Gardner. Or somebody yelled, is there a doctor in the house? I go, yeah, that's me. Unless, of course, someone is passed out on the floor with a burning communication question. and I can help them right now. So, it's a wee misleading. Okay. I also found it funny, back to your answer, at the end of the Guardian article, they correct it and basically say that only some of them are doctors. That being said, while this whole situation with Joe Rogan was the most ideal or smartest thing for him to do, given his platform, it's also something that should not have been surprising at all, given Joe Rogan's past discussion about vaccines in general, which I found interesting. Now, everybody is entitled to their opinion in this discussion forum. But if you look at that episode from Joe Rogan, or any, and I'm not a huge Joe Rogan fan, just in terms of his presentation style, or any of them, Joe Rogan is in the classic philosophical sense what's referred to as a gadfly. He's stinging and biting the larger entity that is the establishment. And this is from Socrates. Socrates says, I'm a gadfly and I'm biting, and he's referring to the city of Athens, and he's likening it to a donkey, an ass. He said, I'm here to bite the ass of the system. That's Joe Rogan. Okay. So in that particular episode, Joe Rogan wasn't saying things about COVID-19 and vaccinations and things like ivermectin. Someone on Joe Rogan's show, who is an expert in the field, was saying those things. So Joe Rogan is acting the gadfly. Okay. This article didn't even really go into details about what the most irresponsible points of the conversation was. True, very true. Truthfully, I don't think that a lot of more liberal media channels care for the Joe Rogan Experience podcast because he questions lots of policies, both sides, and lots of his guests seem to be more conservative, which is also true. I also do not like Russell Brand. And there are a couple of you that said that. Yeah, okay, fine. I find him highly annoying, to be quite honest, but he did have a valid point in questioning though who these people were trying to cancel the Joe Rogan podcast were. And it was mind-boggling that he said that most of the people who signed the letter could not even practice medicine on their own. They weren't even, not because they not practice medicine, they weren't even doctors. Okay. So what's the bottom line here? Both, nationally and internationally, the bottom line for you as a communication expert is to make sure that you read widely and broadly. And I'm not trying to make you into cynics. All right. But don't trust something just because it's there. Just develop that as a reflex. All right. Because when you finish, here's what's going to happen. All right. Here's what's going to happen. When you finish your work, Holly and Mike and Nisa and everybody else, when you finish your work and you get that title doctor in front of you, Holly, you're going to be Dr. Holly. You, Dr. Mike, Dr. Nisa, you're going to be excellent, Dr. whatever. But because of our hardwired attachment to images and symbols, people will assume that doctor means you are the expert. You know all the ins and outs of this stuff. And quite frankly, I'll be honest, you have a duty to represent our university well in your knowing. All right. So that's your job. Do your job. People are going to look at you and say, well, you're the expert. Okay. You know what the best way to fill out the role of expert is? Be the expert. Know your stuff. Read broadly and widely. And when you read something like, 270 doctors sign a letter, you go, okay. Immediately try to get to sources. All right. That's our job. Okay. Question number 4. In their chapter, Blogs and Self-Dissent, Za and Perlmutter, right? Here we consider 2 paradoxes of the modern global media, and I want you to explain what those are. Mike, the authors cite 2 paradoxes in modern global media. The first is that in an age where online communication is accessible to worldwide audiences, no matter where the intended audience is, local or global, how do we understand information across cultures? Exactly, borders and symbol systems. And in fact, there's even one more layer on that, that there is not an internet. Okay, get that straight. There's not one gigantic free-flowing connectivity of information globally. There are internets, and there's connections between them, some of them, and some of them are intentionally walled off from others and heavily regulated, usually by the state. Like China is one. There's stuff that they just don't let in there. Turkey is another one. There's stuff that they just don't let in there. So the paradox is that you've got this what seems like an open network to the user, but is really not. I wrote sort of a popular article about this that focused on the legislation that's currently in front of Congress, called that's designed to protect youth from online content. And I don't know if you saw it, but the House Judiciary Committee had a number of tech CEOs up there, and they were questioning them, and in particular, Mark Zuckerberg got really put on the spot. And the legislation that they're debating is called KOSA, the Kids Online Safety Act. Okay, and I did sort of a popular article about what's going on. Now I'm not a censorship person, but in the case where juveniles are concerned, I'll tell you right off the bat. You might disagree. That's fine. I am for acts like KOSA because the juvenile brain is not ready for things like alcohol, drugs, pornography. I mean, I would say no brain should be exposed to pornography. And the algorithms that run much of the social media platforms, because it's not, social media is not here to make you feel liked or friended. No, man, it's here to slurp up data and develop profiles that they sell to people that want to sell you stuff. It's here to play on your emotions to get you to buy stuff and do stuff. That's look, I'm not criticizing it, but that's the pig goes oink. That's just what it's doing. And you look and you go, well, why isn't that animal going woof woof? Because it's supposed to be man's best friend. No, man, it's a pig. I'll put that link in the announcement as well. Okay, but let's go back to you, Mike. Okay. Two paradoxes. First, in age in which online communication is accessible to a worldwide audience, no matter where the intended audience is. How do we understand information across cultures, borders, and symbol systems? Excellent question. The second is that local content creators create oppositional communication within restrictive societies where the government controls all media. The paradox raised two interesting questions. Even if we see information from international source, can we fully understand the message if we are divorced from the culture? In addition, the examples of the article, the content creators using hidden messages to send dissenting information within state-sponsored media shows how complex communication can be and how sophisticated audiences can pick up on hidden messages. You see this if you watch, YouTube, besides, these wonderful videos, okay, you'll see content creators doing this all over the place, that they've come up with words that do not trigger the algorithm that shuts down the video. So they won't say suicide, they'll say self-ending. They won't say porn, they'll say corn. They won't say gun, they'll say pew pew. All right. So it's a real interesting. This would be a fascinating research topic, a dynamic and ongoing adaptation to the algorithm. Sounds like the people versus the machine, eh? Now, things are starting to change from whence this article was written, because we have actors coming into the space, and we have companies that are saying, okay, hey, we're not going to demonetize you. Hey, anything goes. Where standardized platforms owned by Google, like YouTube, the one we're on, might say, you can't say this and you can't say that. Others have popped up, like Rumble, say, say whatever you bloody well want. Or they're independent actors. Tucker Carlson is one who, prominent personality on Fox News, was terminated. He was fired. He sort of, he said, okay. He spent some time with Elon Musk, who bought Twitter, renamed it X, weird branding. And, Musk said to Tucker, hey, you can say whatever you want on this platform, X. Okay. Tucker Carlson did that for a while. And now he's launched his own platform. Bill O'Reilly, another prominent Fox personality, did the same. I don't know if Don Lemon from MSNBC has done the same. He got canned about a year back. What he's up to, okay? But what you're seeing now is independent individuals finding or founding companies, rebranding companies that allow open and free use of server space, that is the computers that the stuff is stored on, and then access. So now Tucker Carlson is in Moscow interviewing Vladimir Putin. And then you kind of go, okay, is this solving the paradox? Or is it making yourself vulnerable to the disinformation put out by bad actors? Because they certainly do. And I'm not saying that, what's Vladimir Putin saying, that Tucker's his stooge. That's not my point. And my point is, okay, they're breaking this paradox, but is there a downside? Is there a cost? Interesting questions as we go forward and figure out this global communication environment. Okay, everybody, that's all that I have. I'm a little bit over. I try to keep this review video about 20, 30 minutes. Okay. And that's it. So work on those papers. All right. If you have questions, I'm in my office Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Just give me a call. And if I don't pick up, that means I'm on the phone with somebody else. Text me, beep, 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 and I will call you back as soon as I'm able. All right. Have a great, hey, Super Bowl weekend. Have a great weekend. And then not until, but in next week, I will see you on Canvas. Everybody take care. God bless. Bye-bye.